You did it?
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome once again to our fifth show. Is it the fifth show or the sixth one? It's crazy. Anyways, today's show, as you know, I'm Brad Szollose, and I'm the award-winning author of Liquid Leadership, which delves deeply into the business side of why this next generation acts the way they do. And my co-host, Susie Miller, she's on right now. She's doing some quick advertising and social media to let us know that we've started over on a second Blab. So give her props, give her high fives. She's working the technology, baby. And I think she's muted because I can't hear a word she says. Yes, she's muted. Anyways, I want to welcome everybody back. This series has been a blast. The last time we did this, we must have had like 50 to 60 millennials on the call. It was fantastic. And we love the guests that come in. We've had people who were in the military. And basically, we're talking about how parenting and technology and all this other stuff has changed the next generation, both in the brains and their behavior and their expectations. And I'll recap really quick. By the way, I don't know if you know who Susie Miller is, but she is the Better Relationship Coach, and she wrote the book. You want to talk? Listen,
I wrote the #1 bestseller, Amazon bestseller, Listen, Learn, Love, How to Dramatically Improve Your Relationships in 30 Days or Less. And I'm all about helping people create better relationships in 30 days or less. And I love doing what I'm doing it about 25 years. I've got 3 millennials, 30, 25, and 28. And I love talking with Brad about how to really engage with them in a life and parenting style, even in just I think lifestyle versus just the business world, where Brad is our resident expert. So I'm going to put the new post on.
Yeah, got it. All right. Thank you for jumping in, Susie. And it was funny. Susie and I met at a Jim Palmer Dream Business Academy. I was a keynote speaker, and we just kind of connected because I needed the relationship side of this, and we've gotten together to do this Parents Guide. So today's Blab cast is called Mixed Messages, and we're going to talk a little bit about today is how we said one thing to millennials and the next generation, because some of you are grandparents now, but we said one thing, but we expected another. Or we trained them, but we let them go do whatever they wanted because the rules changed when boomers raised millennials. And if you watch some of our past shows, you'll see that there were 3 main influences that changed this generation. First is they were raised to see movies like Star Wars and science fiction as normal, and science fiction kind of became science fact. And if you notice, 90% of the technology that was in movies like Star Wars and even Star Trek, which came later to a millennial, they see these things as normal. You know, when Star Wars first came out, there were pads in the movie, and there were, Wi-Fi and robots and holograms, and we had rotary dial phones at that time. So we have those devices now. The second thing was the video games came into the household and reprogrammed the brains and the way millennials process information, and each generation after this as well. And then the third big piece was child-centric parenting and child-centric teaching, which children now were the center of the curriculum, rather than before it was top down from the adults telling the kids what to do. So those 3 things, we've covered everything. You can go in and look at our previous Blabs. They're also on YouTube. You can watch them. But today we're really going to get into this thing of mixed messages. And I know you're listening, Susie, and you're cranking out the thing, but I'm going to go into a story that made me think about this. At my house, we had a neighbor move in, and he was about 25 years of age. And after a month or so of him being there, I went over and said hello. And, we had said hi when they moved in, but now was a chance to have the conversation, guy to guy. And he walks up to me and he goes, "Hey, you know why I bought my house next door to yours?" I said, "No, why?" He goes, "Because I went on Google Earth and I could see your pool house from the air." And I said, "That means I could put a pool in as well." And so that's why I moved in. And I thought to myself, that is a millennial. He chose to live next door to me because I had a pool house. Okay. So he's using technology to decide where he wants to live. Well, there was a second piece of information that the two of them did. Him and his wife, they were having kids and, doing the American dream, and they decided to get a dog. And I've grown up around dogs my whole life. You can ask my wife; she can't stand, like, dogs will come running up to me all over the place because I'm a dog person. Well, my neighbor's dog kept barking and barking and barking. And I was like, "Hey, Freddie, how you doing, buddy?" And it's over 6 months to a year, the dog still was not getting used to me, and I couldn't figure out why. And then I watched what happened. The wife would yell at the dog and say, "Freddie, get in here!" And she'd be mad, and then she'd give the dog a treat. So the dog was sitting there getting a mixed message. Don't bark, is what she's saying, but the dog is hearing bark. Here's a treat. You did a good job. So there's a mixed message being sent. And we did that as parents. Now, I'm not comparing animals to parenting and all this. It's much more complex, but are we sending out mixed messages? And I saw this at one of the workshops I did down in Texas. A woman stood up and she goes, "Why aren't millennials trying to be successful?" And she was very upset. I said, "Well, what did we remove when we raised millennials?" And I don't want anybody to judge this. It just happened. That's it. I think as boomers, we wanted to have closer relationships with our parents, and we didn't get a chance to do that. And as they got older and they died, we realized we had 20 years with them. Why couldn't we have had a lifetime with them? The other thing is there was divorce, became the norm. And also, this next generation, I think mom working and dad working and everybody doing long hours, we felt guilty. So we kind of said to the kids, "Okay, we're going to drive you everywhere. We're going to do all these things, and we're gonna get you in karate classes and whatever you want, buddy." Hey, and we came down to their level and elevated them up. So we flattened that hierarchy a little bit. But I told this woman, the mixed message that we sent out was this. We didn't yell at them. We didn't tell them, "You got to get out of bed at 5:30. You should fear your boss. You should be afraid to screw up." We didn't do any of that. We said, "Hey, you find your passion. You look for the thing you really want to do, and you go and do it, and we'll support you 100%. Now, boomers, we never got that support. We got a different kind of support. It's sort of like, you got to get a job. Get a job now. If you don't get a job, I'm going to whoop your butt. That was it. Most of us, I don't know about you, Susie, but I had a job at 14. It was like, "Hey, governor, I'm selling papers on the corner."
15 for.
I remember having to get working papers, and my dad signed the working papers and everything. So my father yelled at me. He said, "You have to be on time. You have to be out of bed at this time. You have to do this and all this." And it was just boomers were driven by fear of your boss, fear of hierarchy, fear of if you screw up, your career is over. Well, now you have a generation that was raised on video games where making mistakes is how you learn. And the more mistakes you make, the more you learn. This goes against the grain of everything. So getting back to the story, I told this young woman, I said, we didn't yell at them. We didn't paddle them. We didn't tell them you have to get out of bed. If you screw up, your life is over. We didn't put the fear of God in them, in other words. A lot of millennials did not go to church, so right and wrong was sort of this iffy thing. And now we're looking at them and we're saying, why aren't you successful like boomers? And so there's a mixed message going on there. I want you to hurry up and be successful. Oh, hey, buddy, stay here at the house till you're 30, okay? We bought you a car. So the struggle was kind of removed from child rearing, the paddling, the good, the bad, the right, the wrong. Those were removed. And at the same time, millennials were raised in a very different paradigm, which is we want you to go for your passion. I want you to look for something that's amazing that you can do. And we have a job market that's been horrible. So millennials have really not had a good road. They're all very college educated, but you look around and there's absolutely no jobs out there. And if you listen to the government, everything's fine. It's only 5.6% unemployment. Not true. In some parts of the country, it's 20 and 30%. And the tech industry, just like any other industry, is becoming commonplace. It's like being an auto mechanic, or being a flight attendant or a pilot even. These were once really prestigious jobs, are now becoming commonplace. And, the boomers were kind of getting pushed out into the world, and a lot of boomers are losing their jobs and being forced to become consultants. So here we are today. So Susie, I've been chatting for 10 minutes now. Maybe you want to join me. I don't know. You're part of the co-host.
I am. Thanks for your patience, folks. I have had to repost the new link because, Blab is in beta form. I kind of like, okay, then kind of so are we. So we got kicked out of our first one. There's a couple of things you highlighted that I really want to focus on here. And one of them is our goal in doing this is about creating understanding, and not boomers understand millennials and millennials understand boomers, but really understanding each other so that our relationships can improve. Brad does a lot of work in the business world where boomer CEOs and, corporate execs are saying, hey, who is this kid that's smarter than me, disrespectful to me, lower than me, but I need him in my business? And, kind of as he shared, that kind of filtered down to, wait, that's happening in my home. And that's really where I came in. And, part of what's so important, I'm a big fan of relationships, needless to say. One of my favorite quotes that I have as a chapter in my book is, relationships are the currency of today. And let me tell you a little story about that. Our kids are now 30, 28, 25. And growing up, we had kind of the same thing Brad said. Didn't want to quite be like our parents, wanted our kids to trust us and share their thoughts with us. And, that whole idea, I'll never forget our daughter coming in one day, and she was really frustrated at me. She was about 15 years old. And she kind of lit into me like, Mom, you forgot to do this, and I'm really mad at you for not bringing my stuff to school. And you said you'd take care of this, and you're so busy with your job that you forgot. And I remember pausing and going, okay, wait a minute. In my mind, I knew she was totally right about what she said, but she was incredibly disrespectful. And so I remember looking at her and saying, Kate, you are allowed to express your mind and your thoughts, but you must do it in a respectful manner. So you want to try that again? And it was one of those times where, I had that clash of the parenting I grew up with of here's how kids are supposed to be, and the parenting that I was trying to, my husband and I were trying to, have for our kids. And I'll never forget, I looked at her and I said, you know what, Kate, I'm doing my best, and sometimes my best sucks. So go ahead and write down a list of all the things you'll never do when you're a parent, and, you can cross them off when you do them, because I had done the exact same thing. But that story illustrates how we gave our kids a voice. Y'all are adults now, and it never occurred to you not to share what you think or feel in the moment you think or feel it, because we as parents invited that, encouraged that, felt good about our parenting when you did that. And then as you got older, there came the clash, and there came the idea of, why are you not listening to me? Why are you feeling so free to express your thoughts when what I tell you is, quote unquote, the better thing to do? So I feel like we really did give mixed messages in a way that said, share your thoughts and tell me what you want, but you better share it in the way I like. And I think that was really confusing on both ways, because we invested so much in our kids and in our families, then to have them turn around and say, well, I don't like that you did this or that. We would never have thought to do that with our parents.
Oh, I agree. My father, you did not question him. Otherwise, you got the back of his hand. And my dad hit it hard. So I learned, and this is probably a lot of boomers did this, I learned to be sneaky. I learned to be funny. I learned to weave and dodge and tease him in such a way that he would question me, but he'd look at me like it was that disrespect or not? And I hear your keyboard.
I know, I'm stopping.
Cool dude. So I'll tell my story. When I started dating my wife.
Before you do that, I want to make a comment. You mentioned that your dad backhanded you. Now, working in the psychology field first, and then now as a coach, I had a lot of, not as a coach so much as in the psychology field, I had a lot of interactions with what is in this area called CPS, Child Protective Services. And literally that very commonplace practice of, would really, raise my eyebrows, and I would have to talk to the parent and see what, was going on, because right now that would account, that would fall in the categories of what is not acceptable and maybe need to be reviewed by Child Protective Services. And so there's a really good and necessary agency and service that came into being has kind of, swung the other way. I remember, I'm going to tell you about this. I remember my friend and I were at the grocery store, and she had her daughter in one of those little sunsuits, that had a little bib and it crossed in the back. So basically her daughter's torso was exposed, and her daughter had a bleeding disorder, which meant she bruised very easily. She didn't clot. And so if she, bumped into the rail, or, if her sister played with her too hard, or if she rolled on a Lego while she was playing, she would get a bruise. Right. And I'll never forget standing in the line, and you could see the checkout girl looking at her keyboard, looking at her, looking at my friend. And, I caught it, and I said to, the woman checking us out, I said, hey, she doesn't hit her kid. She's got a bleeding disorder, and these are bruises from playing. And it was on that, and Karen pulled out her little card that said, my kid has that. But after that, she got a bracelet so that she could prove that was true, because the clerk looked at me like, yeah, you're just her friend. Because but when I was a kid, they would have been like, what'd your kid do wrong?
Oh, yeah. Nobody ever questioned if you got hit by your parents. You must have done something wrong. Otherwise, why did they hit you? And then we swung the other way, and now you can't touch your kid, which is not good either. I think corporal punishment should be the very last thing ever on the list, and I don't think you should get cracked across the mouth. That's something my father did. My father almost knocked me out when I was 19. He knocked me to the ground because I was a smarty pants with my mom. So this actually leads into my story, which is when I first started dating my wife about 17 years ago. I came into my nephew's life, her nephew, Sebastian. And I think I reprimanded Sebastian a certain way. And my wife looked at me and she pulled me aside privately, and she said, I don't want you raising Sebastian the way you were raised. I said, really? And right away I was kind of upset, because I'm thinking, you're going to spoil this kid. This kid's got to be spoiled, a spoiled brat. And what I didn't realize is my wife's from a different culture. She's from a very different culture. And Sebastian grew up to be just fine. But I had to really play the game of the balance between some of my dad's teaching, which not all of it was bad, and then my wife's methodologies. And that was really hard for me to learn. But I had been married once before, and I had been very authoritarian as a stepfather in that relationship. So I realized that didn't work. So in this relationship, I decided that I was going to be the hip, cool uncle that would be there for him as a place that, a sanctuary, a safe place, a safe harbor. And every once in a while I'd pop my head in and say, you need to clean your room. There's no argument here, that kind of thing. But we had great, deep discussions. And I think he grew up to be a really fascinating young man. But this gets back to some of that parenting structure. I decided that I had to create a deeper relationship with this kid. So one of the techniques, and we're going to talk a little bit about parenting techniques today, but one of the techniques I decided to establish was this thing called man talk. Okay. And it sounds funny, but I realized Sebastian was the only boy in the household, surrounded by women, and his grandfather. And one day I'm sitting on the couch with my wife watching TV, and Grandpa gets up to go to bed. He gets up and he stretches and he shuffles really slow because he was in his 80s at the time. And 10 minutes later, Sebastian did the exact same thing. And I realized mirroring in the household, and I wasn't living there. So I said, man, I gotta help out with this. He needs some young, fatherly kind of energy around him. So I said, I'll tell you what, Sebastian, you pick a day, Saturday or Sunday. And if I'm here, why don't we go out to breakfast together, just you and me? And this will be a chance for you and I to catch up, and you can tell me anything, and it'll be between you and I. and the girls don't have to know anything about it. And we're going to call this man talk. We're just going to go and we're going to do it. Well, the first time I did it, he got all dressed up and he's in his sandals and his shorts. And he's like, I think he was 10 at the time. And we're walking along and all of a sudden he's real quiet. He comes down the stairs and we're about to go. He goes, I'm ready. And he goes, okay. And my wife and my sister-in-law, they look at him and they go, where are you going? He goes, oh, we're going to the diner. We got man talk to do. And they go, well, what's that? They go, he turns out, he goes, don't worry about it. We'll be back soon. He's 10. So I take him to the diner. He's quiet the whole way. We drive there. I take him in. We get a nice booth. I say hi to the waitress. He orders hot chocolate and I order coffee. He hasn't said a word yet. So I sip my coffee. He sips his hot chocolate. We're like two old men. And then he looks up after about 5 minutes. He goes, math was really tough this week, but I did this and I did that. And all of a sudden he opened up and he just shared everything with me. And guess what happened? That became our ritual for the last 17 years. And it's hysterical to watch him because he really cherishes those moments when he and I go and we sit down and we just talk together. So we established this bond. And as a therapist, you probably can explain why this is so effective.
Part of it was because developmentally he had a place to feel safe and a place to feel heard. And, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there is that desire for connection and wanting to, be seen and heard. And especially given the fact that they'd been raised as a bit of a peer, it made sense to your nephew that he should be heard. He should have a place to talk. Because that was really true in his world. In his world, his teachers asked what he thought, his parents asked what he thought. That was kind of the norm. And so to come into a home and have you actually say to him, hey, I really care what you think. And I want to know what you have to say because I'm going to get to help influence. And in our home, it was, I'm going to influence your mom or I'm going to influence your dad to help them understand. And it gave a way for there not to be that kid in the middle, but the kid feeling like they were heard. The other piece is there was so much coming at our kids in terms of the growth of the world, the technology, the information, that it was a lot to take in. Things were changing very fast. And at 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, they don't have the deep skills of abstract thinking. And so to have an adult to kind of spew it all out, almost like throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks and have it explained, felt very, I think, restful for that generation, for our kids. It felt very secure. Yeah. And we can talk about that quadrant parent.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Carl Rogers is the one who kind of laid the groundwork for us teaching children a little differently. It really was about their self-esteem has to be nurtured. And I'm a big fan. You don't give a kid self-esteem. You don't give it to them. They have to earn it through their own
We're going to disagree there.
Drumline and with their peers. Because you go up to a kid every single day and you go, you're special. You're awesome. That's an outer thing.
Okay.
I feel
go ahead.
True self-esteem, where you get it on your own, is through accomplishing something you never thought you could have, or something that the rest of your peers look at you and go, wow, Billy did something amazing. Yeah, that's how you get self-esteem. You can't hand it over.
No, you can't hand it over. So let me give a rebuttal there. With self-esteem, you can foster self-esteem. You can't. You can support it. You can. I don't think we earn it. Absolutely. I think kids discover it and put it on and then attach it. And it does come through achievements, but there has to be a validation of achievements, because externally a kid is looking to the adult in their world for that validation until they can self-validate. And, I'll never forget, we had some friends staying with us, and their little girl, because we're sitting on our rocker, they had twin little girls, and they loved my husband. He just was the light of their life when they came to visit. And we had them, they were my nieces, and they came every week. And so I remember snapping this picture as John came around the corner, and one of them, they were kind of playing with their books, and Alex heard him, and she looked up, and her eyes had that really bright, expectant, he's home, do you see me? And I think it's one of those great examples of how kids really need external validation. It just needs to be done well. Think about the little kid who brings home and goes, look what I made, look what I did. Or they want you to say, good job, good job. And what we tended to get was, well, it's good, but you colored outside the lines here. Or why did, B's great, but why didn't you get the A? And so we went to the other extreme and said to the kids, everything you do is good. Everything you do is wonderful, as opposed to...
You put a poopy in the in the saddle. Yay. Yeah.
Well, have you ever potty trained kids? That does work.
Yeah.
But the whole idea of allowing validation to come so that they can begin to learn to self-validate. And that's the difference. I think participation trophies, which we talked about in another blab, really kind of falsely affirmed kids of you show up, no matter what you do, you get a reward versus, do you feel good about your effort? I remember saying to my kids, and they all quote me to this day, I said, if you study and you apply yourself and you get a C, then okay. But you have the intelligence and smarts as shown by these tests to get an A if you apply yourself. If you don't apply, so we expect you to get A's and B's. If you don't apply yourself and you get a C and you come home and go, oh, and I look at you and say, how much did you study? Or did you blow off the class or whatever? That's not okay. So it was this idea of respecting the amount of energy and effort somebody put into something and applauding their both efforts and the results, because then they could learn to self-validate. So self-esteem is something I think we as parents really need to foster and cultivate, but we can't create in our kids because they're born to look for it anyway. Right. And I think for us, it wasn't important. Who cares how you feel about your?
Right. Well, now that you validated some of the language a little bit better, I think that's a better choice.
That's a big thing
they
for
have to discover it. Yeah, they have to discover it, and they have to. Parents have to support it, but you can't give it to them. You can't bestow it on them, but you can nurture that environment for them to do it. My father, I don't know about you, I could be tap dancing on Broadway and have my own TV show by the time I'm 15, and my father would be like, did you take out the garbage? My dad never said he was proud of me, never. And so maybe that's why I run around so much and write books and all this. I'm still trying to get attention.
Well, I think that a good part of the boomer crowd is really looking for that daddy approval. So when Rogers came out with that and Freud came out with that, we were like, right, we don't ever want our kids to have to do that. So we will make sure that they get all the approval they need for us so they feel good about themselves. And that was a huge thing. Here's where mixed messages come in for me, Brad, that I think is a really important piece, especially in the parenting realm. Right. All three of my kids played sports. And they, we were excited to drive them to sports, and my husband coached them. We were very involved parents, and almost over involved at times. I think third kids in that generation turned out way better because we were like, we're done. But that whole idea of play, have fun, but you better make the team. Do what you like, and then did you make the soccer team? And so there was this idea of you've got to be good enough so you get into college as the next star. And there was this undercurrent, and I think my husband caught it early, and I remember him coming home and saying, honey, we've got to just get a reality check. Every kid on this travel team in the DC area who were quite good is not going to make the next level, the next level, the next level. And so I think our kids got a really huge set of mixed messages when we said, try your best, but make sure you make the team. Or try your best, but you better darn well get, the top of the heap, because we need you to achieve so we feel good about ourselves. That was the underlying message that I think a lot of millennials grew up with a lot of pressure. So they either got this, you're fabulous no matter what you do, or they felt this pressure of, you better come through because I'm living my unfulfilled childhood out through you.
Right, exactly. And I think, I don't know about you, at my high school, we had 5 career paths. My high school was run like a college. So if you were in business, you got trained in typing and business courses. If you were academic, which is what I was, you got college prep courses, like college level vocabulary, things like this, and you learned how to write, things like that. Then we had VOTech. And computer science was so new back then. My best friend Dieter, he didn't wind up being at school studying. He went to VOTech, which is, he was studying electronics under their radar. But that's where anybody who wanted to be an auto mechanic, an electrician, a plumber, or a welder, you left school in a bus and went to VOTech on the other side of town, and you trained. And nothing was embarrassing about that. This was a profession. You wanted to work with your hands. And I wanted to do art and design, but it wasn't considered a vo-tech kind of profession, even though I wanted the hands-on training, which is the kind of college I went to. And then we had Future Farmers of America. That was another thing, because I grew up in a rural area. So anybody who was going to own a farm someday, they went and they studied at vo-tech with the 4-H club. And then we had ROTC classes and things like that. So everybody had all these different paths, but all of a sudden we went from academics being sort of like a place to get higher learning and knowledge, and we're going to fill your head with knowledge and you're going to be intelligent and maybe you'll go into the business world and all this. All of a sudden it was like everybody has to go into college, everybody. And I had a lot of my friends who went into the military because they loved the military. I have a couple of friends who that's what they wanted since they were kids. And then a few others, they realized, I'm not going to have the money to go to college. I don't have a lot of talent. Maybe I should go in the military. And it was great. But all of a sudden it was like, you got to go to college. And nobody thought of anything else in this country. And if you notice, very few millennials are into manufacturing or any of these other jobs that can make you very good money.
Right. It's interesting. Carl Jung once said, nothing has a bigger influence on children than the unfulfilled life of a parent. And I think part of if you take that statement and you unpack it, the unfulfilled life of a parent would be twofold. It would first be, I remember not feeling, and I'm not saying this is true about me, but that idea of I didn't feel loved, appreciated, understood. And so I'm going to make sure that my kid never, has those struggles. I know for me, I really wrestled with, very high performance, you like me if I do well, my parents, that whole approval. And it was interesting. At one point in time, I talked to my mom about this. My dad died when I was in my, mid-20s. And so we never really got there. But she was like, we had no idea that's what we were communicating. And I understand that. In the same way, I want to look at millennials and say, at one level, grace to your parents, because we, didn't all know what we were doing or the impact of it. And so the idea of understanding each other feels very important. But let me go back to the unfulfilled life of a parent. So there's that piece of, I didn't feel loved, so I'm going to make sure you feel loved. But there's also that piece of, and I'll never forget standing on the sidelines, and there was a family in our community who were notorious for being very loud on the sidelines and pushy with their kids. Now, I did my share of screaming, and I did my share of, and really had to learn to pull back and be the positive, go mom, versus the, if you want it, go after it and really temper how I yelled at my kids. So I'm not saying I did it perfectly, but this one family in our area had a reputation for being just brutal because the story was that they had not made it as far as they hoped in their schooling or in their sports career. They had gotten cut at an early age. And so all of what they had hoped for, the dad had an injury to his shoulder at one point in time, but all the dreams, all the hopes of the parents got pushed on these kids. And I remember my son coming home going, please don't be like, I'm going to call her Mrs. Smith in the bleachers, Mom. Please don't, don't ever yell like that. And, I had to be really aware that my cheering was cheering and not a pressure of you should do something. I think for a lot of boomer parents, we wanted to, live vicariously through our kids. And that's so.
Yeah. Well, I think that was part of my father's drive, is he wanted me to survive. He wanted me to have a better life than him. And he didn't care about my feelings. He didn't, I was a drummer, and I wanted to build a stage in my bedroom because I wanted to have my drum set on a stage. It was the 70s. Okay. So my father goes, like hell you are. So it's like, there was no argument with the parents. And I want to address something really quickly that you brought up. This sort of psychological analysis that we've had over the last 35 years, boomers didn't have that. That was the beginning of the, the psychological stuff and the
Freud wasn't until 1950, right?
Right. So I remember my mother had what they called a nervous breakdown in the 70s. And we went to visit my mom, and I was very depressed because my mother was hopped up on, medication. She was just sitting there on a bench going, hi, Bradley. It really touched my heart. And did my father go to family therapy with me? Did he sit down and go, you okay? His attitude was like, well, this is life. Suck it up.
Right.
There was no touchy-feely, I'm going to hug you. It's okay. We'll get through all this. That's how it was. So I want millennials to understand your parents truly changed everything by raising you differently. And the next time, and I know in a lot of millennials, when you go into the business world, things like this, you think boomers are all idiots, and some of you are upset with us. Remember, we've changed everything because on the subconscious level, we wanted something different for you. And we did it. We didn't do it perfectly. You might do it better. You might not. But we're hoping that you change the world because we didn't get a chance to do it, and we wanted to. So do we have anybody who wants to open the line?
I actually asked that. I asked that for a minute.
Don't forget to give us props.
And
we're supposed to do the high five.
I had there you go. I had so a couple people were on here and then they disappeared. Here's Brittany. Let's let Brittany in.
Oh, one second.
Hi, Brittany.
Hello.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes.
Can't see you, but I can hear you.
Oh yeah, I gotta select the new camera. Sorry.
Okay. So yeah, Brad, I think what you said is really important, that the millennials understand that parenting-wise, you know, everything's a pendulum. And so I know one of the things we're going to talk about later on is millennials as parents and how there is this kind of that same kind of confusion that we had going into it. And I think that'll really help at a later point in time. So Brittany, can you, are you a boomer, a millennial? I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Sorry, I'm a millennial.
Okay.
Excellent. Welcome aboard.
There you go. I can see you now.
Close.
Talk to us a little bit about the mixed messages you felt like you got.
Sorry, I tuned in late, so I just wanted to jump.
Sure.
Yeah.
We're just talking about how parents, boomer parents, gave millennials mixed messages in the realm of everything you do is great, but, you know, do what I say sometimes. And, you know, that whole idea of the confusion of our not wanting you guys to ever feel like you weren't special and important, and really kind of having that child-centric home, and then pushing you to achieve in certain ways where it was kind of like, wait, here's a great example. My son coming home from college, when his dad sat him down and said, okay, what's your plan, son? What's your plan now? And Zach was like, wait, I thought I was going to get to pursue my passion and my dreams, and now you're pushing me to make a decision. And so it was a really interesting conversation because John was like, well, when I was your age, this is what we did. So we really feel like boomers gave millennials a lot of mixed messages, and would love you to chat about that.
Yes. So I definitely can talk about that. So when I finished high school, like I didn't really think about college until it was like my parents like, so you're going to college. I was like, I didn't know how to do any of that. So I kind of signed up very late, and they're like, well, what do you want to major in? You need to pick a major. I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. And that was super confusing for me. So I picked biology because I was like, oh, I like science. That makes sense. And first, like freshman year through it, I just failed. I failed everything. I was like, I hate this. And my parents were like, you need to keep going. You need to retake classes. And I was like, no, I don't think this feels right. They're like, it has to feel right. You're in college now. Like this is what it is. And I was like, no, I'm going to switch majors. I'm going to switch majors. And they're like, okay. I really wanted to go into art. And the reaction was very much like, you can't make money being an artist. So you can be whatever you want, but you can't be anything creative.
Right.
Or,
so that kind of that idea of, you're cutting it out a little bit, Brittany, but what I think I hear you saying is kind of that, pursue your passion, do anything you want in high school, but get serious now about the real world in college.
Yeah. Yeah, but like
you could,
no art.
No art, right. Go ahead, Brad.
No, my father, I was an artist, Brittany, so you're going to love this one. I was an artist, and my father was just like, he didn't support it. He thought I was stupid. He wanted me to be in science and all this. And then my senior year of high school, my two art teachers, they pulled him aside and they said, he could do quite well if he went to this college for commercial design, illustration, things like that. And after that, my father was so supportive. And I said, well, why weren't you supportive before? He said, because when I was growing up, an artist meant you painted signs for a living and you didn't make any money. I didn't know that everything has changed and you can make quite a living designing websites. You know, now you can design websites. They didn't even have computers for designers when I went to college.
Right. Yeah, well, and Brittany, I just saw what you said about having to struggle through it and your brother gets a nice ride. We have two girls and then a boy, and they would absolutely say the same thing. And part of that's by the time, boomers got to their second and third kid, they relaxed a little bit. Third kid, I think first kid should always get to go around again because we were so intense to do it right and do it like our, not mess up like our parents did. We made huge mistakes with our kids. I'll never forget my daughter, well, you got to be dressed just right and do just right. And by my son, she was like, I knew it wouldn't be this way with him. So that, you kind of paved the way for the next kid, didn't you?
Yeah, it was a bit weird. So I paved the way into like $65,000 worth of debt. Just because it took me so many times. Like I switched my major to history and I was just like, I love history, but I don't want to do anything with this, but it'll keep my parents quiet. And then after that, I was like, maybe I'll go to law school. So I took the LSAT. I changed my mind. Like in the middle of the LSAT, I was like, this doesn't feel right. I hate this. So then I went to a master's program for teaching and then I dropped out of that and I went to art school finally. And then, so I found what I loved. But even with what I loved, I dropped out of college for art school 3 classes before graduating. So super not conventional. And I only have a degree in history, but then I got a job and my parents are like, clearly things are different now.
Right. And I think that's a great example. I mean, look at what you said. You tried this and you didn't like it and you dropped out. You felt some pressure from your parents, but you also kept trying things. I think that is one of the most unfair things we did to millennials. And talk about mixed messages. Growing up, the idea of parents, we were saying, hey, try it. You might like it. Hey, let's do dance and ballet and art and sports and I'll drive you everywhere and dance. And so there was all of this going on. And then as you got older, it was, well, pick a major. And, this thing I hear from a lot of clients and when I go speak is, why can't my kid make up their mind? Why can't my kid decide? Why do they get partway through and stop? Because we would say, hey, if it's too hard, just stop. It's okay. We can quit dance. That teacher's dumb anyway, and
my parents wouldn't let me quit. So like I did dance, I did softball, I did volleyball, I did everything. And anytime I was like, I hate softball, I want to quit. They're like, well, my mom was like, you need to play 2 seasons before you know that you hate it. I'm like,
well, we were raised, Brittany, you don't quit what you said yes to. But look at how many options you had and how you could change your mind and all of this information influx. When I was growing up, if you wanted to dance, you went to your family room and put on a record. How's that? Or, we played sports in the street. And so I think there's this frustration with boomer parents who are looking at their millennials saying, why can't you make up your mind? And we actually created the very thing that we're now frustrated with.
Yeah. They sent me to art school when I was in elementary to middle school. I went to art school. So like an art academy as a child, that's super mixed message because I was like, I love art. And they're like, you can't love art. That's not real. It was just meant to help your baby brain grow. I'm like,
right. Well, you had some great thoughts here too. I'm looking at the sidelines. In today's world with the shifting of careers, the workforce is tougher than when we went back to college. We went to college back in the 80s. Parents' expectations always get in the way, in my humble opinion. Boy, I don't know if you were on when we said the greatest burden for kids. Nothing has a bigger influence on children than the unfulfilled life of a parent. So there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah. Right. My mom is super just like that, but now they're letting my brother, like, he dropped out of school now to take a break and like take it slow. And he thinks he wants to be a chef now. And my parents are like, okay, that sounds good. I'm like, oh, that sounds good. Like, you're not forcing him to go to like the master's program and collect thousands of dollars of debt. Like, that sounds good.
Here's what's interesting, Brittany. For us, for your parents' generation, it was the degree that was the union card. Yep. And to this day, I'm doing this online. I've taken my private practice, moved it to a coaching business in a local DC area, and I've gone online with it. And my mom is very supportive, but she doesn't really understand it. And every once in a while, she'll say, well, you have those 2 master's degrees. So if this doesn't work, you have your union card. And that was really important to your parents. Like, so the degree, the education really made a difference because, as Brad said, a couple blabs ago, that was the path to get where you wanted to go. And now what you guys are experiencing is, I don't need a degree. I can pick up a computer and design an app and be, wealthy. I don't need what my parents needed. And so my guess is, Brittany, on your behalf, is that you really paved the way for your brother to have it easier. So you should go tell him he owes you like coffee or something.
Yeah, seriously.
You demand it, Brittany. He owes you.
Yeah.
But let me jump in here real quick. A lot of millennials. I remember I took my nephew up to his final year up at Oswego, and he wanted me to meet a couple of his flatmates, that live in the dorm and all this. And two of the girls came up and they were like, "Oh, you're Uncle Brad," and they were going to college to be a CSI agent. Ooh, so I teased them. I said, "You're not going to be carrying a gun. Do you know that? That's TV." And I realized millennials, a lot of you were raised on what I call TV professions now, and the colleges actually started to accommodate those. And what's interesting is you can go to college now to become an entrepreneur. That's an oxymoron, by the way. Yeah. So here's the thing that happened. We talked about this in a previous Blab. All of a sudden in our culture, and I don't want you to judge us, I'm just saying the loser or the outlier now became the hero in TVs and movies and things like this. And now all of a sudden this floodgate opened where now you can actually make a living as a cook or a chef. You can open your own restaurant, or you could be a dancer and you could get a job in Vegas, or, all these professions have just opened up that, to my father, being an astronaut was a dream. It's a pipe dream. Today, that's a job. And so all these things, our parents, my father especially, was raised during the Great Depression. So his attitude was, get a job, get a job, get a job. He didn't care about and he sent a mixed message too, because my father said to me, follow your passion, figure out what you want to do. And so here we are years later, and you guys are feeling it even worse. By the way, my hat off to you for being so courageous.
It only took a few years to get them to be like, we trust whatever you're doing now. And like, my mom lets me get tattoos now. Like, by I mean she stopped complaining about it, and she's very much like, my whole arm's just covered, and she's like, okay, well, as long as you're successful and that's in good taste and it's beautiful, and she's trying to be more open-minded, and she's like, obviously this crazy person I imagined you to be is, you have your shit together. What you're doing, even if you feel a little weird and you do it more unconventionally. So.
And it's so different than how we did stuff. I love that you said that, Brittany. I bet that she said to you, and if you go on a certain interview, you can wear long sleeves. Or,
yeah. And I was like,
or, grandma's coming, put on the long sleeves, And so I think it's really interesting as a parent of millennials and in this field of working with boomers and millennials to try to understand each other. There is that idea of pausing and listening to you all, who we actually created to think and act like you're acting and thinking. And so I feel like the big missed messages are, we were like, that's great. And then you hit a certain age and we were like, wait a minute, here's the rules. Why aren't you doing what I did when you grew up? Right. And you're like, because that wasn't the path we were on. It's kind of like on a train. Okay, are you ready to fly a plane?
Yeah, we definitely got mixed messages, and then we handed out mixed messages. I mean, my father, he was always bitching and pissing and moaning. When am I moving out? And that started at 17. And so boomers, we were expected to be out of the house at 21. And most millennials have been raised like, you stay here as long as you want.
I bet I could move back.
I
don't want to.
Well,
exactly.
Exactly. Well, and at one level, for millennials, you can't afford to. It's really hard. And, it's a whole different world. It's interesting. Our oldest daughter just turned 30. She dated the guy she married through high school. They went to the separate colleges. They got married right after college. So she's been married about 7 years. And people ask me all the time, do you have grandkids? Do they have grandkids? Have they had kids yet? And I look at them, I go, no, they're having fun. They're traveling. They're very lifestyle oriented, and it's great. It's not selfish. I actually think it's kind of wise, and said to her, when I was your age, we didn't think about what we wanted to do. We did what we thought we were supposed to do. And I think one of the good things boomers did for millennials, I know we did a lot wrong, but we helped you think about what you want to do. And there was this idea of, as much as it might have been overboard, there was a cultivation of your thoughts and ideas and really fostering those, so that my daughter can say to me, you know what, I don't want to do that yet. And I remember we were on a walk. We were headed down, I live outside DC, and we were down at the Union Station and the big open air market in Georgetown one Saturday morning, and we were talking, and she was telling me about this trip that she and her husband were taking to take surfing lessons for a week at some, island in the Caribbean. And she's talking about, we decided to do that, and then next year we're thinking this, and about 3 years out we're thinking kids. And I said, Kate, I'm so proud of you because you're actually being intentional about how you're thinking about your life. And at one level there was this idea of, and I had to pause and go, I'm almost a little jealous, because that was not even an option on my plate. And so, I'm hoping that because of my own maturity, but also the field I've worked in, I had the ability to say that versus the undercurrent. I work with a lot of parents and boomers who they're really angry that their kids are having fun. They're really jealous that their kids are getting to do what they wish they could do. And so rather than talk about it well or even personally deal with it, they put pressure on their kids to fall in line. And that's a huge relationship breaker for parents and millennials. And they don't understand what they're even doing to each other.
I feel that when you say like the getting married, settling down. And so I got out of like a serious relationship, and a few years later, like I felt very confident and happy by myself. And my mom's like, when are you going to start dating again? I was like, well, I just started like my career, so I'm really enjoying this. And I like not needing to tell anyone when I'm coming home, and I like the freedoms, and I'm very happy. I was like, I'm not sad, or I don't feel like I want to be with anyone. And that was really hard for my mom to like wrap her head around. She's like, she's like, wait, what if you're alone forever? I'm like, well, I mean, like, as long as I'm happy, I guess it doesn't matter. Like, I don't think that'll be the case, but
okay, that statement right there, Brittany. As long as I'm happy, it doesn't matter. That's what we taught you, and now you're living it out. And parents are going, wait. My middle daughter's
happy without someone.
Right. And for me, my generation was raised for a woman. You get married because you need to be taken care of.
Stability.
That's what we did. And so, my middle daughter's independent. And I remember her saying, I'm not getting married. I'm going to live my life. And then when I'm ready, and it's really different because as a psychologist and a marriage coach, here's what's interesting. Getting married later has some real positives, but now you've got two very independent people trying to merge lives. So there's a whole nother challenge for millennials.
Oh God. It comes up dating too. Cause you're like, you meet someone, it's like, I like you, but I like hanging out without you more. Like, then it like turns out
and that's the self-actualization piece. That's huge.
Oh, it's so awful. I'm like, well, there's nothing actually wrong. I just don't enjoy his company as much as my own.
And that's huge. Can I tell you that's at one level, that's fabulous because we started our whole conversation talking about self-esteem and self-confidence. That right there is a sense of self-esteem and I'm good enough alone. And you bring a strength into a relationship that's great, but it's very confusing for parents.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
No, I just wanted to give a shout out to Barb. She had left in our comments. We have a whole series on this, Barb, because she said this is a very important topic. And the parenting issue, I'll tell you how this got started. Brittany, you might find this interesting. I do keynotes and workshops for big corporations, for like Dell and MasterCard and big companies. And I took the first .com company public on NASDAQ, and I was working with that first generation that was not acting the way they're supposed to. And after every keynote, I had parents coming up to me, and I'm talking high-level, C-level executives, male, female, grandmothers, parents, in tears. And they said, I now understand why my 4-year-old granddaughter wants to buy an iPhone instead of a Barbie doll for her birthday. They didn't understand, you guys. Your parents don't understand you, and they're in tears. They can't figure it out. Why are you skateboarding at 40 years of age? Well, that kind of thought is happening. And I am the only millennial expert out there that answers the question, why? And you guys might even know why we're focused so much on you. You're the ones who don't obey the rules, and you break all the models we've been raised to obey. And all I say is, God bless you. Rock and roll. Keep doing it. We need more
and so
of
then
this.
Brad and I connected. I've spent, the better part of 20, 25 years speaking to all kinds of different audiences about relationships and building personal relationships and parents and marriage and kids. And then recently moved into talking at businesses about how those personal relationships impact all of your business success. In fact, Forbes did a study that I think people who have successful personal relationships at home make 11 to 25% more than people who don't, because all those skills transfer into the workplace. So as I've been speaking at more business conferences, people have been kind of asking the same thing. Wait, you have millennials? Wait, do they talk to you? Do they like you? Do they respect you? And so Brad and I met at a conference about a year ago, and we started talking, and it was like, oh my gosh, we need to have this conversation together, because I get the emotional parent relationship side and the how, and Brad gets a lot of the why. And so together we could talk about, this is why it happened and this is how we deal with it. And so I know Barb asked about more on the topic. If you go to our site, there's, on here, there's 4 or 5 of them that you can really connect with. You can go to my website, susiemiller.com. There's some downloads. I know Brad has a website. Which one's the best one for them to get a hold of you?
Yes. Go to Liquid Leadership. That's where I'm at. One word, liquidleadership.com, and they can get in touch with me there as well. And also, I have a YouTube channel, which is Brad Szollose. My last name is spelled S as in Sam, Z as in zebra, O-L-L.
Right. And for me, Susie Miller, SusieMiller.com takes you to my Better Relationship TV, which takes you to my YouTube channel. I got to get you on that, Brad. I got to catch you up with the easy way to do this. But here's what's so fun. I love that you're joining us. I love that we have millennials talking about their 18-year-olds. You should join Brittany so the millennials aren't outnumbered here. I think if we can open up this conversation, Brad and I worked really hard at this idea of what would happen if we create understanding. Imagine the workforce if we create understanding, and not just boomers understanding millennials, but millennials understanding boomers, and how to communicate respect and a sense of engagement that doesn't dress them down, but creates a collaboration and a partnership. And that really is what we're looking for in the parenting world. And I think to begin to have that conversation will actually help millennials as they become parents.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to jump in here real quick. When millennials first came along, I mean, they originally called them Generation Y, and that's anybody who's 37 years of age and younger. And then this subset came along called millennials, and they decided to lump Gen Y and millennials together in one because it's just too confusing. But here's the thing that's happening now. In the companies, it used to be that boomers had trouble.
Uh-oh.
I see you. I hear you.
Oh, there we go.
We had a little disconnect. But anyways, millennials are now required to manage boomers. And to a boomer, if their boss is younger than them, that feels like failure. Because we were taught by the time you're 50, you should be running a company, and young people should be under you, looking up to you, because the entire paradigm of hierarchy in business world is based on age, not on skills. Most boomers felt, even though they didn't have any skills that were relatable at 60, they got a corner office and you had to shut up and you had to go, Chet's been here for 30 years. We give him the corner office. He's great in some meetings, in others he falls asleep. That's what happened.
It's interesting. It's coming up on our media today. What were you going to say, Brittany? Go ahead.
So there's always this assumption, like the stereotype that millennials are entitled, and it's kind of this mix of confidence, like being overly confident or feeling like I deserve this because I work hard, but it's always misconstrued and like interpreted as entitlement. Yeah. And I'm just wondering, I feel like it's because we were raised to be confident and to be strong. Like when I was younger, I was a bit of a smart ass. So I'd always be back talking my mom. And I remember my mom's book club ladies asked her, and they're like, wow, how does it feel to have such a smart ass for a daughter? Like, said this to and my mom said, you know what? It'll be great because no one will ever walk on her. Right. She will not take shit from anyone. And she's pretty clever when she comes up with something. It's not like, So it was like very early on, my mom kind of knew what would happen. She's like, these are great skills and like personality traits to have when you're older. Right.
It's a great point, because we were not told that. We were taught stop sassing, and so it wasn't until later we found ourselves. I want to go back to what you said about entitled. You said we were taught to have our own thoughts, ideas, express ourselves, and at one level, as kids, you were entitled. We taught you this. We were like, what does Brittany want? What does Brittany like? I remember going to a school conference and telling my kid's teacher that she was wrong about how she was treating my kid, my middle daughter, and that she needed to kind of shift herself and understand my child who was allowed to be this way. In contrast to, I remember my mom coming home and saying, I just had a conference with your teacher and she said you need to change. And it's that idea, I think, that we as boomers imbued in you, and now we're like, they're entitled, and I want to go, right, because we made them that way. So
Exactly.
let's figure out how to do this together.
Well, let me clear this up a little bit. When I was 25, nobody was seeking advice from a boomer at 25, because I had somebody in a conference raise their hand and say, isn't this just, like what youth does? Millennials are no different than any other generation. And I go, no, they are different. Their brains aren't the same as ours. And the other thing is they have money and they have a little bit of power. They have a skill set that we need. And at 25, nobody was listening to a boomer give advice on anything. And Bill Gates and Steve Jobs were the rarest human beings on planet Earth. Today, everybody's been raised to be the next Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. You have a lot of pressure on you. And because of your skill set, everybody's looking to the 25-year-old now as an expert. Who, in a boomer's mind, we're like, who's an expert at 25? Are you crazy?
Well, and the question is the expert at what? Here's the thing that I think is so interesting. I was sitting at a dance recital with my niece, and we got somebody else joining us. Let me let him in. At my niece, and I was on my iPhone trying to figure out how to take a picture of her with a different lens or something. And my niece, literally 7, 8 years old, pulled it over. Here, Aunt Suze. And so at one level, in that moment, she was a technological expert. I think what's hard for boomers, and something I would say to all the millennials out there, is you can't learn wisdom, experience. You can't learn some of what we bring to the table. And that's why I'm such a fan of this idea of both. What if we come together? Because living, 53 years is my age, I've learned a lot. I have some things to share with you, and I have some things to learn from you. And that, to me, is huge. I'm going to welcome Alvin in here. Hi, Alvin. Clearly, you're not a millennial with your lovely white Gucci. Tell us a little.
Well, I have a son who's 25. He just graduated from Yale Law School. The short story on his life is that at the age of 5, after I was a stay-at-home dad, and at the age of 5, I was completely wiped out by his energy, and as most kids have a lot of energy. And I showed him how to play. And the short story on that is that he took off like a rocket with the whole thing and played tournament chess for 10 years, from age 5 until 15.
That's fantastic.
And when you're playing tournament chess, you're playing adults. There's really a lot of mental skill to dealing with that. You have to look ahead. You have to calculate. You have to be disciplined. You have to know the rules. You have to deal with crazy adults, crazy Russian adults, mostly. Right?
Yes.
So on and so forth. So you go after about 10 years of that. And at the point that he entered high school, he said, well, I'm at the fork in the road because chess is really not a career. It's a career for very wealthy students, players of wealthy parents, or unless you're extremely good at it and you take off. But my point is that when he became interested in this, we just let him go with it. And I knew nothing about the chess world or anything. But the amount of respect that a 7 or 8 year old gets from a near master who is being beaten by him is very telling. And I think a very important part of this deal is to not overly protect children from adults. Because this is when you get the respect as an adult because you know as much and maybe more than they do on a particular subject, and you get respect from your peers, it results in results are like a very confident.
Yes.
And so he retired from chess at the age of 15. Retired from tournament chess and went to school. and did its APs and all of this other stuff. Became interested in philosophy via debate. Went to a summer camp. Hope I'm not going over my time limit here, but I went to a summer camp in debate at Stanford and became involved in philosophy. And then went to University of California, Berkeley, and got a degree in philosophy, and then applied to all the major law schools because the route with a degree in philosophy is a PhD, and then all of a sudden you're in a very, very narrow track.
Right.
As a professor of a very, very narrow area.
That's
so he's working. His girlfriend is, we're talking 25-year-old. His girlfriend is a producer for NBC Dateline. They both live in New York City now. He works for a fairly large corporate law firm. His 3-year plan is to work for this company for a couple of years. And then he has a clerkship with a federal judge in New York City by the name of Kimball Wood. And he wants to work with a clerkship with Kimball Wood for a year. And then he says he's moving back to the Bay Area. And then he does what he wants.
That's amazing.
That's
Alvin, we're going to have to wrap up soon, but I just wanted to reach out and tell you, you did an awesome job raising your son, because I taught my nephew how to play chess too, and I didn't know it very well, and I had to do the research. He wound up beating adults, and this is the gaming generation. This whole generation
it is.
We call them.
Right about that.
We call them. Yeah, we call them gamers as well. So, fantastic show today, and I think we did. We gave mixed messages, but I think they're becoming successful. And Brittany, I want to thank you for being on as well. Susie, you want to close us out?
I do. I'm going to just look here. Our next Blab is 11 a.m.
You want to do Friday? Can we do?
Can't do it Friday. We have it 11 a.m. on Thursday.
Okay, then we'll do Thursday. I'll do it from the city. How's that?
Yeah, that'd be great. I have it 11 a.m. on Friday. I'm booked to speak on Friday at a biz conference, so I can't do that. But Thursday, 11 a.m. we'll be here, and we'll be talking about. Oh, I don't have the answer up. Do you have the next one up?
It is. It's playground learning styles.
Playground learning styles.
There were 4 learning styles that dominated the millennials' life, which was, in the old days, boomers, we had somebody at the blackboard dictating to us. But this generation was immersed, auditory, visual, tactile, everything through video games, kinesthetic learning styles.
I used to smush bees in the sandbox.
There you go. Exactly. So thank you so much, y'all, for joining us. Thanks, Barb. I hope your son can join us next time, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Thanks for pointing that out, Barb, 11 a.m. Eastern time. So that is early morning. And Brittany, thanks for all your insights. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on Thursday.
Thank you. Click the X, Susie, and that'll take us out, or stop recording.